Let's move on to our third and final main topic today. And our third and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Colton Gallo. And Colton Gallo writes, "Hey, John and crew. Hope you're doing well. I am doing well. Thank you very much. Did you see NATO's, that's the National Association of Theater Owners, for those of you who may not know, did you see NATO's response to Disney's delay on films like Black Widow and Eternals? They sound thankful that Disney didn't opt to send them to Disney Plus, but they outright admitted that they will likely have to close their doors again. What does this mean for the immediate and distant future of the film industry?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, so again, for those of you who may have missed it, yesterday, Disney did announce that big movies like, well, the more immediate one was Black Widow. Black Widow was supposed to come out in November, and it has now been bumped another 6 months, all the way to May of 2021. This does create a little bit of this creates a major catastrophe for the theaters. Because as we've been talking on the show, what is the benefit of, yay, we've opened the movie theaters again, but we got no movies to show? And it's great that they started opening up theaters with catalog movies like Lord of the Rings or Godfather. That's great to get some people back into the habit, but you can't sustain an industry for 6 months or more on those films. So what do? And one of the things that I suggested when, we were doing the show the other day was, I got a feeling they're going to have to close the theaters again. If you don't have the movies there to bring in the audiences, there's no point in having the theaters open. You're just going to lose more money opening than you are if you just close them down. I mean, you're going to lose money either way, but there it is. In the midst of that, yesterday, the National Association of Theater Owners, the vice president there, and now the National Association of Theater Owners is kind of the collective group of all the movie theaters, practically all the movie theaters, but certainly all the big major chains. They're all a part of the North American Theaters Association. And one of their executives put out this statement. He said, "We need big movies. We'd hoped that Disney would hold on, but studios have to make their decisions based on their marketing spend and their marketing plan." Marketing money is so important and so key in all of this. "If they aren't certain that theaters will be open, they're going to delay. We are gratified that they're moving and not going to Disney Plus." That's kind of an important statement. But until we get some of that certainty, we may be seeing theaters close back down again, because it's really tough. If you don't have new movies coming in to keep the lights on, to keep paying people, you lose money being closed, but you may end up losing more if you can't get audiences in and you're open. Make no mistake about it. When the executive of NATO says, until we get some certainty, we may be seeing theaters close back down, that's him letting everybody know theaters are going to be closing back down. Mm-hmm. Maybe not all of them. You might see some theaters decide, you know what? No, we're a smaller one. We're doing okay. We're getting 20 people in per screening of Back to the Future. We can hold on. Maybe not all of them, but you're going to be seeing theaters close back down. You don't have an executive of something like NATO come out and put out into the ether the idea of, we might have to close unless that's already been determined. So take that to the bank. You're going to see theaters that have reopened close back down. Maybe not all of them, but you're going to see a significant number of theaters in the coming months closing back down again. And then this whole process that we just went through of getting some of them to trickle back open, put out some catalog movies to get people, go into the habit of going to the movies again. Hell, we see Tenet closing in on $300 million, which is terrible for Tenet under normal circumstances. But hey, listen, given the current pandemic global situation, we've had $300 million worth of people going through, but that's all going to be thrown away now. And I get it. It like he said, it's a tough situation the way it is, and everybody's just trying to do and make the best decisions they can. But now we're going to have to go through this whole process again. Whether that's in March or December, it's going to be tough. This is also going to have the additional ramification of now some movies that were holding on, like Dune, for example. They've been putting out some marketing dollars promoting their December release. But if Warner Brothers is looking and seeing, hey, now the theaters are talking about they've even put out public statements saying they're looking at closing theaters back down again, that might put the pressure on Warner Brothers to say, okay, you know what? We got to pull Dune. We got to bump Dune 3 or 4 or 5 months and then go through this restart process again in January or February. I mean, I don't know. There could be long-reaching ramifications on this, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Aaron, you know, I thought this was a very tempered, balanced, common sense response that the guy from NATO put out. He said, listen, we were hoping Disney would keep the date, but we understand that they can't. We're grateful that they see the importance of keeping it theatrical. But the reality is we may be having to look at closing the doors again for a period of time. I thought it was a very, very good response, and really at the end of the day, not all that surprising, although startling nonetheless. Anyway, Aaron, you see this statement. What do you make of this situation?
Well, yes, surprising in that, as you said, in order for someone of that level of a company to make any public statement, unless it's something like flippantly off the cuff, which they immediately retract and pull back after talking to their stockholders, you know, for him to make that kind of bold statement about the state of the theater industry shows that there has already been, you know, they've already had those conversations, and they're facing the reality, and they're gently trying to prepare people for what is coming down the pipe. And, you know, yeah, it is very disappointing, and it's very sad, but I agree. I think that for the long-term survival of a lot of these theaters, in order to keep the possibility of being able to reopen in 2021 at some point, you know, trying to struggle and keep them around today while having to pay all of their employees, you know, that's going to ultimately end up costing them more money. So it does make sense to shutter the doors, furlough everyone so that the employees can get on unemployment or find, you know, short-term jobs if there are any in those areas, and then wait until you actually have projects that are available to, you know, to be screened in the theaters, which is another reason why, going back to the Black Widow conversation that we had, yes, we are all desperate to see these projects that we've been talking about for years, and we're so excited about them. But if we ultimately want for the theater industry to survive, keeping them off of platforms like Disney Plus and HBO Max at this point is really important. You know, we all have to be a little bit more patient and go, all right, well, we're going to wait and see them in theaters and then flood back to the theaters as soon as it's safe and we're able to. You know, you think about areas like Los Angeles and New York that have so many theaters. I mean, we are saturated with theaters. You throw a rock and you know, hit an AMC. Those areas are closing or have been closed down, but also in other markets where theaters have been able to open, perhaps not as many theaters need to stay open. Perhaps they can be consolidated. You know, I'm not an economist. I don't necessarily project that my opinion on the right way to do this is the way to do it. But I do think that there is definitely some value in saying, okay, we're going to close down what we have in order to succeed in the long term. And it's a terrible situation all the way around, but all the more reason why we all individually have to do our part to, you know, do the best thing to get through this. And I'm not going to be political.
Yeah, I mean,
wear a mask.
Yeah, I you know, one of the unfortunate things here too is that I think about Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers kind of, and Christopher Nolan put themselves in the position of being willing to be that first penguin in the water, you know, to see if there are lion seals down there to eat us, and to be the first one to go in there in the hopes that, I mean, it would make some money, but also in the hopes that it would help re-kickstart the theater industry again. And really now, so them making between 250 and 300 million already, I don't see that as being all that bad, current circumstances considered.
Yeah, I mean, they're on slate to make probably by the end of the year at least 400.
Yeah, I think they'd probably get there. But that was, a lot of their motivation was to also be that champion of the movie industry and to help the movie industry get going again. And now the real defeat for Tenet, unfortunately, is the fact that it volunteered to be that first penguin in the water for nothing. Because now we're in a situation that all the big movies, and we already saw Wonder Woman move, and now then Black Widow's now moved. I think it's inevitable we're going to see Dune move again. And ultimately what that means is that really, I thought, gutsy gesture on Warner Brothers' part to be willing to sacrifice and use their big, huge movie to help the industry get rolling again. Didn't work.
I don't think it was for nothing, though. Let's face it. If the first if the first penguin who jumps in the water does get eaten by the seal, then all the rest of the penguins know not to jump in the water. So we have learned something valuable, and also think about how long we have been talking about Tenet. And the fact that this is the only new release that is in theaters. So I'm not saying that it's doing well. I'm not saying that it's doing better than it would have in a normal situation. But is it doing better than maybe it would have done if it had, say, been pushed to May 2021 and been released during the summer with all these other blockbusters to compete with? I mean, if Tenet is the only new release, which it won't be a new release by, March of next year, but if it's the only film that's still in theaters, I mean, as we said, the cumulative effects of this film are going to be pretty outstanding. And maybe keeping it in the theater is as one of the only newer films that you can see is ultimately going to be a better box office decision versus having it in the theater for 2 or 3 months and then pulling it and putting it on a streaming platform.
Right. But that's if theaters stay open.
Right.
For
exactly.
them to stay in. Because it's true. If all the other movies move, but the theaters are still open, and it's like you want to go to the movies tonight, you got one choice. Tenet. It could make a decent amount of money over a longer period of time.
Well, can I get some clarification?
Close. Sure.
Is it the North American Theaters Organization or the National Association? So it's just owners. The United States.
No, that's why the name is kind of weird. It's actually, there are many theater chains outside of the not all of them, but there are many theater chains outside of the United States that are also affiliated with NATO, even though it's called the National. So I don't know what.
But also the impression that I got from his quote wasn't, we're shutting down all the theaters tomorrow. The impression that I got was, the theater you love in your town might be closing. But as this is it's almost like an amoeba, this thing, it's like one week it's hitting Texas really hard. The next week, Wisconsin is, in the red. And as things continue to change, in California alone, we are a huge state. And if you go outside of Sacramento, they have a very different situation with COVID than we do here in Los Angeles. So the same rules don't apply in every area.
Well, I don't think he's talking about every, I don't think he's saying everywhere. But here's the thing. When things are getting tough for a corporation, the PR line is always, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Everything is great. Yeah. That's always the PR, no matter how, like Ben Affleck was out as Batman. Warner Bros. No, Ben Affleck's not. I mean, that's the way companies go. For NATO to come out and actually say, yeah, we're probably going to have to see some.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see some closures.
A lot of their membership has already told them that they're planning on closing down. But it doesn't necessarily mean every movie theater is going to be closing down. And it certainly doesn't mean every theater is going to be closing down tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be just interesting to see how that sort of plays out. The question is, guys, for you, what do you think about it? I personally thought it was a very aware, a very common sense statement that they put out. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, of course they want all the movies to still come out. But of course you got to understand that studios are trying to figure out what's best to do right now. It's a tough situation where there's no clear best idea right now. That's just the case. But how do you interpret all this? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys.